So let's talk about the next programming language. So hopefully you can hear my voice using a different mic. So let's talk about Python. So Python is another programming language that's popular. It's one of the more popular programming languages today, as I would say it's somewhat easy for beginners, but it's more of a scripting language, so it's a little bit different than most languages. So if you have a background in coding, I think Python is a little bit of a twist because there are some different avenues that you have to take. It's real specific and it's different detail. But it is open source programming language, so with extensive support modules and community development per se. It's also used to develop 2D and 3D animation packages. It's developed for APIs. It's developed for one of the key things that people like Google have been using Python for quite some time is Python's used within searching. So when you go to Google and you search for something, you find it in a quick amount of time. Obviously they have an algorithm in place, but they are using Python on the back end, which is early on when people would do an interview for Google. Typically, early on, they were looking for people with extensive Python experience, where that's changed over the years. But talking a little bit about Python, it's good for problem solving, abstract thinking. Some of the different classes that you could take dealing with data mining, or even particularly if you work in a business where you are using analytics to predict assumptions of things that could happen. Python is that language that's used, that's very popular. It's a language that's used for a lot of situations like that. So very, very good language to have. It's replaced SAS back in the day was that language, which is still, a solution, but Python is really taken over the market. Believe it or not, in Python you can develop web and desktop applications. It's flexible. The benefits, so some of the benefits right here, benefits are it's flexible, it's intuitive and readable. There are many tutorials out on YouTube and many other channels. It's one thing is it's scripted compared to compile language. So, for example, if you were, using ASP.NET or C# or Python is more of a compile language versus a scripting language. Some of the downsides are there's always a downside to a language. So downsides. Let's see if I could copy this here. Copy that. Paste it. Okay, I'll just replace it. It doesn't start with a programming basics. So no basic start. So typically it's known as an abstract. Too many important basic concepts. So no basic starting components for this language. So like I said, it's becoming very popular for both education and industry standards. It's a good projection for salary for Python. You can make anywhere from 72,000 to like mid 100s. So you could come into the business doing really good with Python. Python's very popular. Like I said, it depends on the organization that you work for. Like a lot of organizations are going to stick to C#, .NET, and then all the JavaScript and different frameworks. But if you're working for any company that does anything with analytics, you're going to see that they more sway toward Python than other ones. Okay. So that is Python. So let's move down to another one that we wanted to talk about was one that I'm not real familiar with, but a little bit is Go. So Go is a newer one out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here. Oops, Control Z. There we go. And we're going to put go. And we're just going to leave this here. I'll just put placeholder. All right. And I should have up here. I don't. I should know. Don't want to do that. I should have the positives. All right, Go. Let's talk about this. So Go was developed in 2007 by Google, obviously for the name. It was typically for APIs, so application programming interface, and web applications. So Go has become one of the fastest growing programming languages due to its simplicity, as well as ability to handle multi-services and network systems and massive code bases, etc. So Go is also known as Golang. I'll put it down here. Also known as Golang, which was created to meet the needs of developers working in large projects. It had gained some popularity among large IT companies or organizations thanks to its simplistic, modern structure and syntax familiarity. So being familiar with it, organizations started to use Go, including Google, obviously, because they developed it, Uber, Twitch, Dropbox, just to name some, among many others. It's also gaining popularity around data scientists because of its agility and performance. So, like I mentioned Python, and that's typically what, sorry, I had to get a drink. Typically, Python is used with data scientists, but this is starting to become very popular. So skills needed. It's easy for anyone that has any type of background in software development to kind of understand and learn and willing to work with it. Platform is cross-platform, mainly desktop, so it can work on whether you're running a Mac or PC, but it's mainly for a desktop application. It's not as popular as Java or Python, but it's increasing popularity. Different organizations are starting to come up to it. Typically, companies that have been using Java or C#, for example, for a number of years, typically have a foundation, and their foundation they follow is, hey, you know what, we're going to use these languages because this is what we know. Where startup companies are more likely to use some of the more modern technology because they're not kind of married to something that is, I won't say archaic, but something's been out there for a while. So some of the benefits, and I put up here, I put positives, I meant benefits. So we'll say benefits. So some of the benefits with Go is it's easy to learn. It's transparent code. So what that means is transparency just means that it's easy for someone to recognize the syntax to understand what is happening with or without that background. It's compatible and it's quick. I mean, that's what Google wants, is quickness. Now, some of the downsides, there's no generics, which means you may end up writing some source code. Then you would want to include another language. So let's say Java, C#. Problem with that is, let's say limited libraries to support other languages. We'll just kind of sum it up that way. So it's not very robust or supportive at the moment, but that's like anything else. Salary range typically $92,000 to north of $120,000 based off of experience. So that's what it always comes down to, experience. So these are 3 languages that we're going to talk about this week. in this module. Now, like I said, mentioned, we're going to talk about in the course, we're going to talk about Java, C#, and get into all these other languages and so forth. But right now, we're just kind of starting it off broad. Something simple for now is Go, Python, and JavaScript. All very similar but different categories. So, review this information. Questions, reach out to me. So hopefully this has provided some type of limited capability or explanation of this language. Hey, thanks for watching.